Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. David at the channel Polyglot Reading has invented a new tag called the Memento Mori Tag. I believe Memento Mori means remember death. I was tagged by Grix at Grix, etc., who I believe he was tagged by Steve Donahue, who was tagged by David. So I'm the fourth in this particular succession. Grix has tagged a good number of people, and I don't think I will be tagging anybody. But if you feel inclined to do this tag, I will put a link to David's original version, and you can go to his, watch it, and you can copy the questions down from his description box. I'm not 100% in the best shape today. I have a bit of a headache, which for me, it's one of these 2-day headaches, which is a rarity. And so I just thought I would just get this thing out of the way because it's the type of tag that is going to keep me thinking, and I would rather quit thinking about it, honestly. So pardon me for being a little bit more cranky and cantankerous than usual. I'm not really in bad shape. I can function, and in an hour and a half or so, I will be going to Paris Baguette, which will lighten my mood considerably. But I want to just knock this one out, okay? So there are 8 prompts or questions, and I have them here on my little phone. Number 1, how many books will you be able to read before you die, considering your age and statistical life expectancy? I should say that probably a lot of my answers could easily just be copied down verbatim from Steve Donahue. I think when a person reaches a certain age, you tend to come to a certain relationship with death that somebody younger might not have. So statistically, I have no idea what my statistical life expectancy is. So I can't really answer that question. Number 2, how does this number affect your choice of books? Well, given that death is imminent, it just makes me, if I'm going to read a book, choose a book that I want to read. But it really isn't any deeper than that. I would not consider setting up a bucket list and say there's 10 books that I must read. I just wouldn't know how to think that way. So just whatever I feel like, I'm still what BookTube people call a mood reader. Whatever I feel like picking up and reading, that's what I'm going to read. I mean, I may think about something in the future. I'm thinking possibly in April to read Les Miserables by Victor Hugo, but that could change. But it's the thought of death has nothing to do with it. Generally speaking, when it comes to actuarial things or other things that can be measured by numbers, things that are measured by numbers are generally not that important. 3, what will happen to your book collection once you have passed away? Steve talked about it. I've seen enough death, and generally, if the person has had some forethought, they will designate a good friend to take care of the problem. If you just let everybody willy-nilly deal with it, well, goodness only knows what will happen. Oftentimes, all of these precious accumulations of a lifetime just wind up going into a dumpster that has been rented for that purpose. So designate a person. I will, if if my partner currently has predeceased me, then I will find another person that I can designate to deal with the problem. But other than that, I'm not really worried about it. Um, you know, a good haul to the nearest used bookstore would probably be good. I don't consider it a collection. It's just a bunch of books. 4. Is there a book that helps you cope with the disturbing fact of a limited lifespan? I don't find it a disturbing fact. I mean, it is a fact. Possibly when one is first thinking about it, it feels like a disturbing fact. But uh, as I say, I've seen enough death. In a given situation, it might be disturbing, but as the macro picture, uh, there's there's nothing really disturbing about it, and so I don't really see a need to cope with it. 5. Which book on this topic do you consider the most witty or entertaining one? I don't think that I really read a lot of books about the topic of death. I read poetry, and so death is always at the wings. Um, I, what is that? To his coy mistress, at my back I always hear time's winged or winged chariot hurrying near, something like that. Uh, I find that as you get older, the decibel count of that noise just rises. So it's an unremitting roar at this time for me. But it's not something that needs to be coped with. It's just something that's there and you just recognize it. But it's something to be aware of. It's not really something to cope with. So I'm not answering that. Poetry, though. Okay, 6. Do you have a specific nonfiction book on the topic of death that you'd like to recommend? I once took a class by Bill Hill or William Hill at Mundelein College in Chicago, and I think it was called On Death and Dying, and there was a textbook for that class by Ernest Becker, which he thought the world of. And I read the book and I thought it was okay. So I mean, if you're looking for that sort of thing, that might be a good bet. Bill Hill was highly regarded among all the faculty and students. So that would be a place to start. Now, he also assigned a couple of anthologies, and I might even have them packed away somewhere that were very nice, specifically anthologies dealing with literary mentions of death. And some of those were pretty good, so I would recommend those. I can't right now go down and see if I have those or do any research, but I'm sure there are plenty of those, and just see what you can see. 7. Humor can be helpful to confront death. Do you have a favorite witty quote on this topic? No, I don't. I don't really think that death is something that needs to be confronted. Poets have written a lot about death, and as T.S. Eliot has pointed out, some of what poets have written has been sort of stupid too. And so it often occurs to me that Dylan Thomas poem, the very famous poem and very beautiful, his villanelle to his father, do not go gentle into that good night. He's advising his father an absurdity. Why should his father not go gentle into that good night? Personally, I would rather go gentle into that good night, or gently, maybe is how it should have been said. You can find a lot of good mention about death in poetry. I think it is the one of Yeats. It's either Yeats or Houseman. They have similar poems on the subject. She bid me take life easy as the grass grows on the weirs. And I can't remember the rest of it right now. I'm a little bit out of my mind, I guess. It occurred to me that, excuse me a second. Pardon me for that. It occurred to me that the poet E.E. Cummings was always a big writer on death. I think that's was probably one of the draws. Poets talk about it all the time. How do you like your blue-eyed boy now, Mr. Death? And death, I think, is no parenthesis. Grix pointed out that philosophers think a lot about this topic and generally don't do such a good job. That's because there's really not a lot of thinking to be done about death. Does this tag make you feel uneasy, or are you quite relaxed about this topic? I'm probably pretty relaxed about the topic. If you feel like doing this tag, please consider yourself tagged. I'm sorry it's not really up to snuff. If you're looking for consolation in poetry, in English poetry particularly, I would highly recommend some of those old poems. There is one, Timor mortis conturbat me, the fear of death distresses me. That's a refrain. Actually, there are numerous poems that have that line in it, Timor mortis conturbat me. I think it's very comforting, even though the speaker is talking about the fear of death. When it comes to the fear of death among humans, I have to say there is no way to predict how you are going to react, so it's probably not worth thinking about. When you reach that situation, you will know. Neither of my parents exhibited a fear of death when their times were near, but I have seen it. So I have seen fear, and in an instance where you would not have expected it. So you can't predict any of this. Steve Donahue's video points out it's something that lies in store for all of us. As I say, it's not really something to spend too much time thinking about. The ideal really is to just live. So now I remembered what I was thinking about Cummings. He had a poem that was pretty famous in its day about, and now I can't remember which poem it is, and I can't, but he makes a distinction between death and dying. I think Steve made that distinction too. Oh, I wouldn't want death, but dying, blah, blah, blah. And I always felt, well, he has that exactly wrong. I mean, death is not something to think about, and dying, the physical process of how your body falls apart, if that's what's due to you, or whatever else is impacting your body to alter your state in such a way. That is something I think that nobody is keenly looking forward to. But again, as Steve points out, there's nothing you can do about any of that, so there's really no point in dwelling upon it. I will leave it there. Thank you, David, for inventing this tag. I wish I had done a better job for you. And thank you, Grix, for tagging me.